Okay, so today we're going to be doing a special video, and look, it's all nice, high quality. I got my little notebook here so we stay on task. This is going to be a video about the top movies of each generation. This is going to be highly opinionated, but there are numbers to back it up for each movie. I'm only going to choose one movie from each generation, and there's a Kratos. So one movie from each generation, and I have to... Okay, so one movie for each generation, and I'm not going to include movies that are part of a trilogy or even have at least one sequel. This makes it a lot easier for me to choose one movie. So obviously I'm not that old, but I've been watching movies for a very long time. I'm going to choose one movie per generation dating back to the 70s. I felt that was the most fair that I could judge. So starting with the 70s, one of my personal favorites, I believe the best movie of the 70s generation was Monty Python and the Holy Grail. So, looking at it here, Monty Python and the Holy Grail has an 8.4 on IMDb, which is very good rating. People are harsh these days about movies. Has a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. That is even more surprising. Movies very rarely stay that high because Rotten Tomatoes, the number I'm taking is actually critic rating, and everyone knows how critics are. So Monty Python and the Holy Grail came out in 1975. It made $127 million in the box office. That is actually adjusted to the US dollar, seeing as it's a movie from the UK. I mean, if you haven't seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail, you should definitely just go watch it. It is considered one of the best comedies of all time. It obviously made a good amount of money for the 70s, and it's just hilarious. That one was kind of a no-brainer for me, which movie to pick from that generation. So moving on to the next one is the 80s. This one was even more of a no-brainer because this movie is my all-time favorite movie ever, and that is The Goonies, released in 1985. Look, just jump ahead 10 years, there's another best movie coming out. It has a 7.8 on IMDb. Come on guys, rate it better, it's The Goonies. It has a 67% on Rotten Tomatoes, but no one cares what critics think. It made $61 million in the box office. Yeah, that is a big jump down from, you know, Monty Python, but I believe it is the best movie of the 80s. That one might be more so biased than any other movie on here. I grew up watching The Goonies. I've loved it ever since I first saw it. If you haven't seen that movie, you are definitely missing out. Probably lived under a rock. Who knows? So, moving on to the 90s, this one was actually kind of hard, and I am not entirely certain if that's because I grew up in the 90s or just because there were a ton of really good movies. So like I said, none of these are counting in any movie that's a trilogy or at least has one sequel. That would make it really easy. A lot of good movies were released in these generations, such as Star Wars, Indiana Jones, you know, all of those. And once we get to the 2000s, there's Pirates, Transformers, there's all sorts of things you can think of. So the 90s. This is one that a lot of people will most likely agree with, and I believe it is Forrest Gump. It's actually not one of my favorite movies. It's probably not even in my top 10, but it is such a good movie that looking through all the other movies that did really well in the 90s, I couldn't pick anything else other than Forrest Gump. Has an 8.8 on IMDb, which actually beats Monty Python and the Holy Grail. It has a 72% on Rotten Tomatoes. People in the 70s, I guess, better critics. It was released in 1994, so almost hitting the 10 years ahead mark again, you know, 1975, 1985, 1994. So it made $677 million in the box office, and that actually set records for Paramount. The funny thing is, though, Paramount lost money on Forrest Gump. That is hard to believe. I was reading that it was actually due to distributor fees and all of that, so they were just kind of not as smart about how they put it out in the world. It made a ton of money, but it's said that it lost them about $60 million. So that's crazy if you think about it. Forrest Gump lost money for Paramount. So far we have Monty Python and the Holy Grail, comedy. The Goonies, action-adventure / comedy. I think it would be more of an adventure comedy, but there's a lot of good action in there. You know, there's some police chasing scenes and fires and boulders. Forrest Gump is a drama. I'm usually not a huge drama person. I usually tend to stick more to the comedy. I believe that a comedy, no matter how good or bad, most likely will at least make you laugh once. It's not like a horror or a drama where if they're bad, they are just atrocious. There's got to be one good laugh in there somewhere. So comedy is my favorite genre. Moving on, the next section and the last section is going to be the year 2000 to 2010. And a lot of people are probably going to give me huge flack for this choice, but like I said, this is a heavily opinionated video, so not taking into consideration sequels or trilogies and things like that, remember, that leaves out Transformers, Pirates, some Star Wars, all sorts of stuff. I believe Phantom Menace was 1999, so that one wasn't included in the 90s, and the next movies won't be included in the 2000s. Anyways, without further ado, the last pick, Signs. Now I know there is such huge hate for M. Night Ramalama Ding Dong. This movie to me was the best extraterrestrial movie at a drama standpoint. So it's not really a sci-fi and it's not super action-packed, but it was just a really well-made drama. It came out in 2002. It has a 6.7 on IMDb. Like I said, this is kind of controversial, but it actually has a 74% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is more than The Goonies and more than Forrest Gump, and this is the critic rating from Rotten Tomatoes, so that's actually kind of surprising, but that was back in the heyday of M. Night Shyamalan, after, you know, Sixth Sense, all of that, everyone was loving him. Before he tricked us with The Village, which seemed really awesome, and then he spun it to be not as awesome as you would think. It had $408 million made in the box office. So it made more money than the 70s and 80s pick, but less than the 90s. That's considerable. I mean, Forrest Gump was a titan for a movie in general. It's still, movies hardly make that much these days. So for not beating Forrest Gump, that's not that big of a deal. It almost made as much as Forrest Gump. And they probably didn't lose money on it. So this video was kind of just for fun. It's an idea that I just came up with out of nowhere. I would actually really like to see your guys' picks. It's harder than you would think. So one movie for each generation, dating back as long as you would like. No movies that have sequels, because Monsters, Inc. I was greatly considering, and I was considering breaking the rule for that movie, but then I didn't. Monsters, Inc. was awesome, but you know, Signs, gotta have Signs. So in the comments, I would like to see you list each one of yours, and now I actually have a Twitter. I will post a link to that, so you can follow on there for movie news, and just I will post all the videos that come out there. So thank you all.